Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Dinghy. This week I hope to install a new hatch in our head so we can hopefully get a little bit better air circulation in there. I also hope to be able to repair some damage to the primer on our sail drive. And last but not least, I want to see if I can use this stainless steel trailer winch for raising and lowering our dinghy arch. My name is Mess, this is my wife Ava. I've spent the last 5 years on a somewhat extensive refit of our 1987 Warrior 38 named Athena. That was a DIY fun-packed adventure complete with a very extensive osmosis treatment, building a new rudder using vacuum infusion, rebuilding the entire deck, gutting and subsequently rebuilding most of the interior, painting the topsides, and a ton of other projects. The summer of 2021 we started cruising full time. Now we're finally ready to begin our adventure. We have lots of exciting projects on our board here. I am gonna attempt to prioritize the tasks that actually requires us to have the boat up on the hard. Like for instance in last week's video where I put in that new through hole for our air conditioning. Having said that, not all of the tasks here on the board are actually ready for me to get started on. Like for instance I have one here for raise the waterline. I'd like to raise the waterline just a couple of inches to make sure we don't get any growth on the hull when we're in a rocky anchorage. But right now the boat is wedged in like sardines in a can, and for me to be able to raise the waterline and have it look good, I kind of need to get a laser on there, and I can't do that when we're all boxed in. So hence we will get started on the hatch install in the head. We aren't supposed to get any rain today, but no matter what the weather forecast tells you here in Trinidad right now, it seems to rain just a little bit every day. So the prospect of cutting a giant hole in the cabin tub is slightly terrifying. Right now in our head we have one of these solar powered fan thingies, and these are, to be frank, okay, so yeah, it does that sometimes. So what I was trying to say is they're kind of annoying. Pushed and pulled on the fan, that scraping sound is now gone, but if I turn this thing on, you might be able to hear that whining sound. That sound drives me nuts. With the annoying sound and also the fact that if it's been overcast for about a day, the fan stops running because it's not getting enough sun, and also the fact that when it is actually running, we don't get that much airflow in there, leads me to the fact that we'd probably be better off with just a hatch. During our recent stay in the US, I picked up not only a new hatch, but also the trim kit that goes along with that hatch. This is a Lewmar low profile hatch. I think this is the 03 size. And here is the accompanying trim kit with a little buck screen. The low profile hatch doesn't actually match the look of our other hatches, but I think we need the lowest possible profile to make absolutely sure we can clear the main sheet when we're sailing. So yeah, hence the low profile hatch. Just a quick little note on choice of hatch before I get the install started. If you're going to be installing a new hatch on your boat, it may be worth it to just make sure that the hatch is actually suited for where you want to install it and the type of water you're sailing in. Figuring that out is super easy. There is a CE rating that consists of a letter and a number. The letter will tell you what type of water the hatch is certified for. The category of this low profile hatch here is A, meaning it's rated for offshore use. Now the number is the area on the boat where you're going to be installing it. This hatch, for instance, is approved for area 2, 3, and 4. The cabin tub where we're going to be installing this is an area number 2. If, for instance, you wanted to install this in the side of the hull, that would be area 1, which this is not rated for. I absolutely love it when manufacturers include a cutout template for their products. Lewmar does not, so I quickly made one myself and double-checked that it was a reasonable fit. When I installed the fan, I made sure to leave plenty of room around the fan in case we ever wanted to swap it out for a hatch. That is going to make installing the hatch a lot easier. The fan is threaded onto its base and is easy to remove. The base, on the other hand, is smothered in Sikaflex. I could spend the better part of a day trying to wrestle it off of the cabin tub, but in the blistering heat, that is more effort than I'm willing to put in. Using my handy template, I marked the location of the hatch. Unfortunately, the thickness of the cabin top, the insulation and the headliner is just barely inside of what the blade on my jigsaw can handle. The hatch turned out to be a nice snug fit. I'll have to trim the hole a little bit later to make sure there's room enough for the trim kit. But before the rain starts, I would love to get the balsa core in the cabin top sealed so it's protected against any future leaks. I removed a little under 1 centimeter of balsa core, or just a hair over 1/4 inch for the fraction ophiles amongst us. I also drilled oversized holes for the fasteners. All of this in the name of protecting the core. The material I removed will be replaced with thickened epoxy. The best way I have found to apply thickened epoxy in holes and tight gaps is by using a plastic bag as a piping bag. After having smoothed out the thickened epoxy, I covered the hole to get the sun off of the epoxy. As opposed to what Ava might tell you, I will, at least on some occasions, do a little bit to try and limit the spread of Oh Gloria's man glitter when working on the boat. This was one of those occasions. Thanks to the blistering heat here in Trinidad, I'm already ready to bed the hatch. Doing it in less than 1 day, complete with core replacement and everything, that's a personal best. But I went to the chandlery to get some sealant, and they didn't have Sikaflex, which is kind of my go-to. They had 3M's 4200, and they had life caulk. I've used 4200 a couple of times before. Now, it's not super common in Denmark. I don't know about the rest of Europe, but in Denmark, like, most chandleries will not stock 4200, but you can order it off of the internets. Now, life caulk, on the other hand, I have never seen a tube of this before. I think it's maybe only available in the US, but I've heard lots of good things about it. It's my understanding that the adhesive bond in the 4200 is a little bit stronger than in the life caulk, but for an application like the hatch here, I don't really care too much about the adhesive bond. I just want a sealant. I did a little dry fit of both the hatch and the trim kit to make sure everything fits. With that out of the way, I drilled the holes for the fasteners and trimmed the size of the hole one last time. I would like to have a clean, flat surface to seal against, so I enlisted the help of Mr. Angle Grinder to quickly remove the kiwi grip from under the hatch. All that was left now was to apply life caulk to the hatch and smush it in place. I used a couple of fasteners to index the hatch before letting it touch the deck. With the hatch in place, I put washers and nuts on the bolts and tightened the hatch down. Again, to attempt to keep the sun off of the hatch, I covered it with a bit of cardboard. I only just finished installing the hatch and putting away my tools, and look there behind me. Here comes the rain. Hopefully the new hatch is not gonna leak, but we'll see. I think the hatch looks perfectly fine. It's just a hatch, and hopefully it'll also give us a little bit better airflow in the head. Despite the threatening appearance of the sky yesterday, we didn't end up getting any rain. So today I've just tested the hatch real quick with a hose to make sure that there aren't any leaks. And yeah, now we can go ahead and install the trim kit. The trim kit is thin and flimsy plastic that only really serves one or two purposes. First off, it makes the hole in the cabin top look a lot nicer. And then, yeah, also it can hold this little bug screen so you don't get any bugs inside. It comes with nice, thorough instructions, but I don't think there's a lot to this. We need to trim the height of it and yeah, then just screw it in place. This fly screen thing seems pretty flimsy. I mean, I guess it's better than not having anything there, but yeah, it's all kinds of wobbly, but yeah, hopefully we'll enjoy our new hatch. With the hatch installed and seemingly not leaking, we can go ahead and close that task and move on to the next one, which is this one, Dinghy hoist. As you might recall, back in Grenada, I've switched out the blocks on our dinghy arch to give us more purchase, to make it easier to raise the dinghy. And while it is easier to raise the dinghy, dealing with all the loose line, the extra line because of the extra purchase, is a little bit annoying. Somebody, and I really wish I could remember who, but somebody suggested using a trailer winch instead. This thing comes with a handle here that goes on to the side, and then it ratchets going both ways. I think this could work out really well. I do have a couple of minor concerns. Getting the line to have a fair lead onto the drum here could prove difficult. I hope we can overcome that, but also the size of the drum here is somewhat limiting. We may have to switch to a 100% Dyneema line just to have it be thinner so there's enough room here on the drum for the line. And then my final concern with this guy is the fact that he is 304 stainless, so not 316. With the winch here being 304 stainless and not 316, we are going to see some surface rust on it, most likely. I can attempt to polish it a little bit more often and baby it a little bit and see if we can keep it looking decent. I mean, 304 is definitely better than mild steel, but it's definitely not 316. I just simply could not find a trailer winch in 316. If you're a long-time viewer of the channel, you might remember that drilling holes in stainless by hand is my least favorite ever activity. And I don't think it's helped by the fact that this is a very cheap drill here. It just does not have a lot of torque. This is gonna suck. I measured the location of the holes on the back of the winch and used my fancy new center punch to mark the holes. As mentioned, drilling stainless is no fun, and after having drilled the first 2 holes, my drill bit decided it was time for a break. You giant... I figured I could still do a test fit to see if there were any unexpected issues that were going to pop up. Fortunately, the U-bolts I brought from the US were a perfect fit. It doesn't make sense to use the winch with the current 4-to-1 purchase on the dinghy arch, so I swapped out the new blocks for the old single blocks. To figure out the length of the line, I simply lowered the dinghy arch down lower than I think we'll ever need it and cut the line. The winch has a fancy way of attaching the line to the drum, but unfortunately it turned out the line was just a little bit too thick. As a temporary fix, I simply just clamped onto the core instead of the entire line. I think this might actually work out better than I had hoped. As you can see, I've turned the winch to the side here. That's simply just to get a more fair lead. Also, right now, there's only one U-bolt holding the winch onto the arch because I messed up the drill, but yeah, this feels pretty good. The block I've got attached up here with a bit of line is very much temporary. I want to see if I can come up with a better way of securing a block to this so that I can get this line deflected at the angle I need. Of course, the arch isn't loaded yet, so we're gonna hold off and see what happens once it is loaded. But I think we may just want to shorten this handle a little bit because it does take a fair bit of time to raise the arch. It may look a little bit flimsy, simply just securing the winch with a couple of U-bolts to the arch, but I think it's gonna be okay. This is one of them fancy Freedom Unit threads, so I don't know the exact strength on this, but it's somewhere in between an M5 and M6. And if memory serves, the force required to pull a nut off of an M5 is something like 300 kilograms. Of course, there are 2 nuts on one of these U-bolts, so yeah, it's definitely going to be stronger. And to be honest, I don't think this U-bolt is going to be the weakest link in this chain. I think those shackles out there on the arch that secure the little blocks are going to break before this does. Or maybe the winch here is going to slide up on the pole. But yeah, I definitely don't think this is going to be the weakest link. My friend Joseph introduced me to his friend Jackie that has a metal workshop in the yard next door. Jackie had a small piece of stainless scrap that was perfect for a line deflector doohickey. Unfortunately, it involved drilling yet more holes in stainless, but the vise and a second pair of hands to supply lubricant helps a lot. Jackie busted out his polishing gear and quickly turned the rusty, rough piece of scrap into a spiffy piece of boat bling. Here's a quick before and after polishing shot. Thank you so much, Jackie. Here is the result of the visit to Jackie's workshop. I'm sure you can see what I'm going for here. My plan is to have this guy here clamp onto the square tubing on the arch, thereby being able to move the block further out, getting me hopefully a better lead to the winch. And the astute viewer might note that we now have 2 sets of holes in the base for the winch. Hooray! So let's go ahead and get this guy mounted. After having tightened the 2 U-bolts on the winch, I clamped my little line deflector doohickey onto the arch. Looking at the angle of the line, this is already a lot better. Unfortunately, I've not been able to find a new single block for up here, so I'm reusing the old one. But yeah, I think this will work. I am very excited to see how the dinghy hoist situation is going to pan out in the real world. I have high hopes. I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to get the dinghy out of the water every night, which means there's going to be less of a chance of the dinghy getting stolen, and also we won't have any issues with growth under the bottom, so that's going to be pretty awesome. There are a couple of other tasks here I'd hope to be able to close this week. That is prime damage on sail drive and anti-foul sail drive. It makes sense to do those 2 at the same time, so you're within the overcoating interval on the primer. But for the life of me, I have not been able to find a small spray can of Trilux 33 here in Trinidad. So yeah, these may prove to be difficult. As is the case with many problems, it can be solved by simply throwing money at it. I have found out that I can buy a gallon of Trilux 33 here for around 250 US. But I only need to anti-foul the sail drive. It's about this size. A gallon is just way too much, and I would much prefer not to sail around with a giant bucket of anti-fouling. In next week's video, I hope we will finally, perhaps with a bit of luck, be able to put the finishing touches on the Fisher Panda Saga. I will tell you guys more about this wonderful adventure in next week's video. And also in next week's video, I am going to fix a giant eyesore here aboard Athena, which is the hatch right above you guys. And also, we have a bit of an issue with our anchor roller. But all of that will have to wait until next week's video. I hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next week for yet more Oh Glorious DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!